Welcome to the Grit Growth Podcast. Commit to conquer, lead your life, leave a legacy, gather your grit, and let's get after it.
Well, Eric, thank you for joining us on Grit Growth. As we kind of want to hear from you and kind of what got you to this point in your life and kind of a little background and understanding of who you are.
Yeah, so I've had my own business since 2013, and I've worked with construction companies since 2004. And the main thing that I help them to do is when someone gets promoted into a leadership role, specifically in construction, they know how to build projects, but they don't know how to build teams of people and lead people. And so they have to make that shift from being a project builder to a people builder. And so that's what I focused on helping my clients to achieve in the past almost 10 years now.
So what have you learned in starting your own business and that shift, I guess, really from leader to mentor and coach?
Yeah, the main thing that I've learned is to play long-term games with long-term people. So there's what I found in life is that there's no magic pills. There's only hard work. And what you want to be able to do to be successful as an entrepreneur is to identify the niche that you want to go after, understand your niche, and then spend a lot of time committed to providing tons of value to that niche so that you establish yourself as an authority and people get to know you, like you, and trust you, and so therefore want to work with you.
It sounds like relationship building.
It is. It is long-term relationship building. That's really the key in any business I found. And then as you're in those long-term relationships, your goal is to solve people's problems and to add value. And so if you're solving problems and adding value, and you're the type of person that others know, trust, and like, then they will purchase from you and you will be able to build a long-term successful business.
So were you always in this position, both with your knowledge base and relationships in your career?
No. I started my career out of college in sales. I actually sold copy machines and fax machines back in the day.
What's a fax machine? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so I have grinded out thousands of cold calls in my life from a sales perspective, and I know what it means to get out there and to sell something that is tough to sell, but have a good time doing it.
So, have you heard the word no before?
Oh yes, yep.
How did you keep coming back?
There's a combination. There's the typical one where some people are metrics based and they say, okay, so I know that I need 10 no's to get to a yes. And so therefore, if I'm on my 7th no, I need only 2 more no's to get to another yes. I was never really like that. I was more, I wasn't so metric driven. I was more sort of commitment driven, more driven by the fact that this is the job that I have to do. And the job involves me making cold calls or, getting no's and getting rejected. So I accept that because that's what I've committed to. And so that's what I'm going to do.
And so what kind of gave during those times, and,
Sure.
and you kind of, that seems like a little mantra, like here's almost playing a little mind game, right?
Yep.
You're keeping your mind active.
Yep.
Were there other items to keep that resilience? Part of grit is that resilience, and passion to see things through, but that resilience, what other little kind of tricks, games, mantras did you have that kind of kept you going?
Yeah. The worst people can say to you is no in business, right? That's the worst they can do. And so, that's really my perspective when it comes to sales specifically. But then also when it comes to my business, my business involves a lot of creativity, a lot of producing content and putting it out there. And sometimes content works, sometimes content doesn't work. And for me, it's all information. I don't get distressed if something doesn't work. I just take that as information. I look to understand what does work and leverage and double down on what works, and then just stop doing what doesn't work.
So kind of that fail fast adage. So
yeah, very much so. Yeah, failure is totally okay. You got to get used to it if you're an entrepreneur. And what I find is that if you understand when you're failing, and you're able then to either adjust off of the failure or stop doing what you're doing, which is not working, the quicker you understand that, the quicker you're able to say, okay, this isn't working, and then you make adjustments, the more successful you'll be.
Did you get better at that with time?
I think you always get better with time because you build up your knowledge base. I think that I think it really depends with people. I think that over time, some people can get stuck in their ways.
Right.
And as a result of that, they're not as nimble as they used to be. And they become more insistent on their own way of thinking. Over time, I know what works for me to a certain extent, but I also know that there are things that I need to learn and grow in. And so I'm always looking to learn and to grow.
Absolutely. And I guess it's realizing those trigger points, right? When you notice something failing, making the adjustment. Okay, that adjustment didn't work. Do you make another adjustment? Do you make another adjustment, or when do you cut it off? Right? When is your arm in the trap and you got to gnaw that thing off because no one's coming to rescue you?
Yep.
And were there items or times that you kind of learned to do that faster, or realize or see when to make an adjustment quicker? Are there ways to improve that skill set? That's a skill set. It's not an easy one to do.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that you can do that is just by seeing how your audience responds to what it is that you're putting out there. So if I've done this many times before, is I've tested out, let's say, a new training program. I had a sales program, a marketing program. I didn't know if it was going to work. It was specifically for construction companies, the niche that I work with, and so I did a very, very low cost test. And a low price test just to see if it worked. I noticed that it worked. And so then I doubled down on what worked and stopped doing what didn't work. Okay. I think one thing that's really important, though, that I just want to circle back on is that sometimes what entrepreneurs do is they get bored with what's working. And so then they stop doing what's actually working and start doing something new. And then they wonder why their business suffers. And one thing I do want to encourage the listeners to do is that if something is working, keep doing it.
Look for improvements, or just let it ride?
No. Well, absolutely look for improvements, but don't, just because you're bored doesn't mean that your market is bored.
Audience is.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So don't mistake your boredom or your desire for something new with what you're doing as not working or needing to be changed. Always tweak it, always look to get better. But if it works, keep doing it.
And entrepreneurs by nature, again, kind of shiny object syndrome, that's what makes them good entrepreneurs, is they are willing to jump out there and kind of take a risk, take a chance. But I think that's a great view on that as far as the boredom aspect. And I hadn't really thought of it that way before. So I really appreciate that comment, because entrepreneurially, yeah, you can almost change yourself out of something good.
Yes. Yes.
Yep. So as we kind of talked about, the mantra is to see change, make the adjustments, stop doing what isn't working. How do you convince yourself to keep doing what is working?
I think one way that I found is that when I get feedback from clients, and that feedback is positive, it just reinforces for me that, hey, dude, this is some good stuff right here. Right. And that really, really helps me. So feedback from clients. And then the other thing would be to continue to develop it, to tweak it, to make, because if you think that you've delivered the best possible product or service and there's nothing that you can do to improve it, then you're delusional. There's always something that you can do to improve your offering, the way that you deliver it, the value that you provide. And so by receiving that positive feedback and then allowing that to fuel you in making sure that you're always looking to improve what you're offering to the marketplace, those can really help you with that boredom issue specifically.
What are some good questions to ask your audience to, one, get honest feedback, two, find out what items to tweak, areas for improvement?
Yeah, that's really good. So I have a specific testimonial question process that I ask people, and I'm just I wasn't prepared for that question, so I'm just going to pull it up just so that I make sure that I get all of the questions here. So just give me a second.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
sure through the magic of editing, we can work this one out here. Let me just hold on a second. I'm gonna. Yeah. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so what I do with my clients when I'm looking to get a testimonial is I want to make it easy for them. So I schedule a Zoom call like this, and I send them the questions in advance, and I tell them this: I'm going to record this Zoom call. I'm going to ask you these questions. I'm going to take your answers and transcribe them. I'll produce the draft of the testimonial, and then I'll send it to you for your approval. So this is like, for them, it's like a 5 to 10 minute process at the most. So let me share the questions that I ask. First question is, what was the obstacle that would have prevented you from using my services? Okay, so I start with the negative. What was the
Okay.
obstacle? So in my business, because I work with construction companies and I do coaching and consulting and things like that, the first obstacle typically is if I don't know anything about construction, right?
Mhm.
That would have been an obstacle. Another obstacle could be the price. Okay, so I want to bring that right up front in a testimonial. Okay, so in most of my testimonials, you'll see, hey, what would have stopped me from working with Eric is X, Y, and Z. That's the first
Right.
question. Second question, what have you found as a result of using my services? Okay, so that's a very open-ended question, and I just want to hear what they have to say. Third question, what specific feature did you like most about my services? What specific feature did you like most about my services? And I'm looking for specificity there, obviously.
Right.
Fourth question, what would be 2 or 3 other benefits of my services? Okay, again, I'm looking for more information there. The fifth question, what is the benefit of my understanding and experience working with the construction industry? Now, I ask that specifically because I am a coach, but I work with contractors only. And so I am always branding myself as a construction industry expert. And so I want that in the testimonials. Sixth question, would you recommend my services? If so, why? And then the last question, is there anything that you'd like to add? And that's often an interesting question because they'll come up with things that I wouldn't even think about. Okay.
Right.
So
right.
I ask those questions, I transcribe their answers, I send them the draft, and they then take that and approve it or edit it. And I use that in my marketing and on my website.
So yeah, very easy to go ahead and morph that, switch that to any kind of industry for,
Absolutely.
That's not
you can use that in any
industry
industry that you'd like. Yep. It doesn't have to be construction specific, but if you do have a niche, like for me, where, there's a million coaches in the world, right? Everyone can just put up their hand and say, I'm a coach. Okay, great. But what do you know about construction? So let me tell you what I know about construction based on what my clients say.
Right.
So then go ahead. Yeah.
As I say, I'm kind of hearing where you started in sales marketing, copiers, fax machines.
Yeah.
Construction industry expert.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
So it's cool. So in 2004, I met a guy, actually, I was at a networking event and I was there selling copiers, but I got to know this guy and I met him and I actually sent him a thank you card with a quote from Zig Ziglar in it, right? Zig Ziglar is this old school sales guy. I don't know if you've heard of him. Zig is classic. Okay. So then he contacted me because and he said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about what I do, because what he does is he sold leadership development programs. And it was a combination of video and live facilitated training. And one of the video faculty was Zig Ziglar. And so that got his attention. And so we met and I went to work with him for a number of years selling this leadership development program. And so and it's something I always wanted to get into because I like that kind of stuff. I didn't sell copiers because I loved copiers, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah. And then, and so the first client I sold was a construction company called LB Construction here in the Sacramento area. They're a large commercial contractor and they're still my client today. So I fell in love with working with construction companies. And so in 2013, I started my own business. And I niched down pretty quickly to working with contractors, and I've been doing it ever since. And I understand construction. I understand what makes a construction business tick. I understand the ins and outs of the business, and people know that. And so they bring me in to work with their leaders.
So yeah, basically through working in the industry for all those years, you've heard the issues from multiple places, multiple sources. Anyway, and have dealt with them, obviously.
Absolutely.
So how different is everyone's problem?
In turn, ask me a little bit more on that.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with all these different construction, even though you're niched down to construction,
yeah.
right? And you're dealing with all these different construction companies, how often is it that they're all dealing with the same issues?
All the time. Yeah. So for me, that they bring me in because they're dealing with communication issues, leadership issues, conflict issues, all those kinds of things. They need to develop their people, and the same issues are in all construction companies. Construction, in essence, is a very conflict-ridden business, just because it's so complex, and there's different competing parties that are surrounding a project many times, and those parties have to work together in order to build something that's profitable and something that's safe and something that comes in on time. And so there's all this conflict, all this challenge, communication issues, and I'm working with people on those all day, every day.
Gotcha. And obviously this can, as an entrepreneur, bringing on people and or dealing with clients, whatever industry,
yep.
You kind of mentioned 3 specifics there: communication, leadership, conflict, if I got them right.
Yep.
So, how does an entrepreneur who's, self-employed, single employee, now they've got 5 employees, now they've got 15.
Yes.
What would you advise to them on things to learn, or how do they advance themselves, as their businesses grow?
Yeah, the first thing is if you're going, see, it's very interesting. I was chatting with one of my clients this week, and he wants to go from 2 million to 5 million in revenue. And he knows in order to do that, he has to hire people. But he knows that if in hiring people, it's going to be a pain in the neck. So he's got to understand whether or not he's going to, go through that pain. So I'm like, well, what pain do you want? The pain of not having the revenue, or the pain of having people who help you to get the revenue? And so you've got to understand that if you're a solopreneur starting off and you're bringing people into the organization, you've got to identify the right people for the right positions in your company. And you're going to go through pain learning how to do that, because it's not an exact science. If anyone tells you hiring is like, here's the magic pill for hiring, they're full of it. Okay. It's it's an art, it's a science, it's a challenge. And so you have to understand that the only way to grow your business, if you need people, is to bring people on and go through a process where you're trying to identify people who are a fit culturally and people who are a fit technically for the position that you have open. And then you bring them in and you make a commitment that you're going to spend the first 90 days onboarding this person and making sure that they know exactly what they need to do to execute on their role and responsibility. And in that 90 days, you're evaluating them to see whether or not they're a fit with the company. And you're going to make a commitment that at the end of 90 days, if you're not sure if they're a fit, you're going to maybe give them a little more time. But if they're not a fit, you're going to part ways with them. Because what I find most entrepreneurs do when they're growing their business and hiring people is they bring on the wrong person, they put them in the wrong position, and they hold on to them for too long.
Yeah. Wrong, long.
Yep. Wrong, long. There you go. That's a good one.
No, I mean, the old adage of fire fast, hire slow.
Absolutely. It's 100% correct. And so this guy who's actually trying to grow his business, it's interesting. He brought on a project manager earlier this year and it didn't work out. And I was congratulating him. I said, dude, you got rid of him after 6 months. Congratulations. Most guys and gals, it takes them a year or two or more to get rid of that person. So you did good.
Right.
Yep.
And ultimately, it's not fair to you. It's not fair to that person. It's more likely that person's miserable too, but they don't want to lose a job. And they're almost relieved when they get released that, now I have a freedom to go find something else.
100%. And that's another perspective to keep in mind, is that you're doing others a disservice when you allow them to stay in your company when they're not a fit.
Right. So, what I've heard through our discussions here is a lot of mindset.
Yes.
And having that mindset of resilience, having that mindset of, essentially the answer is no until you ask, right? If in that sales world, the mindset that, by holding on to this person, it might not be right for them. Are you doing them a service or a disservice?
Yep.
And so many people that haven't had the opportunity to be coached get in the wrong mindset and stay there thinking they're doing the right thing.
Yes.
And so how do you kind of, if on this podcast, you do other podcasts, I mean, what do you tell that person? And if they've got a personality style that is very caring, is, more empathetic by nature.
Yes.
How do you help them see things differently?
I think one of the things that you have to be able to do is you have to help people to understand first their duty to their business. Okay. And to understand that when you allow a toxic employee to stay in your company, or even let's say you're a solopreneur and you have a toxic client, what you're doing is you're doing a disservice to your business. And you're actually being unkind to the person who's toxic and to other people in your organization. And so it's important for people to understand their duty to the business, which is to run it profitably and effectively in such a way that is a benefit to the employees and a benefit to your clients. And it's also important for someone who is empathetic to properly understand the definition of kindness. Okay, so to be kind to someone is to do what is best for them. And like you well said earlier, Matt, sometimes you do people an unkindness by allowing them to stay in your business when it's not a fit. You're actually being unkind when you think you're being kind. So properly define kindness and be willing to have the difficult conversations that are sometimes necessary in order to express that kindness.
So how does someone build the courage to have that difficult conversation?
Yes. So I like when there's a confrontation that I need to have, I have a particular model that I teach my clients. And I got this from a book called Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. So I want to give credit where credit is due. So she has a very excellent individual confrontation model. Okay, so I'll give you an example. What you do is you name the issue. So let's say I'm working with a project manager and there's a lack of urgency or a lack of planning. I'm going to name that issue. The second thing I'm going to do then is select a specific example that illustrates the issue. So I'm not going to just say you always or you never, right? We have those conversations sometimes in our personal lives and they're very frustrating, right? You always do this or you never do that. What are you talking about? You know?
So there's never absolutes.
Let me just,
right.
So you select
the oxymoron I just used.
You select a specific example. So for instance, yesterday on your project, it took you 14 hours to put down 400 tons of product, and it should have taken you much less. So you name a specific example. Then you describe your emotions about the issue. So you might be frustrated, you might be concerned for the financial health of the company as a result of the issue. Then you clarify what's at stake. So this is important when you're having a confrontation with someone. Like if you come up to me, Matt, and you have an issue you want to discuss, I'm immediately thinking, well, what's at stake here? Is this my job? Is this a promotion? Am I about to get fired? So you clarify what's at stake. And if someone's job is at stake, you must clarify that with them. In other words, you should say to them, if this doesn't change, then we're going to have to part ways. Now, if their job isn't at stake, you need to clarify that as well. If it's just a coaching opportunity, because sometimes if you're the person in authority coming to me, the employee, and you're confronting me, I might be completely intimidated by that and thinking, oh man, I'm done here, right? No. So clarify what's at stake. Then this is key right here. Number 5 is identify your contribution to the problem. Okay. So for instance, let's say someone has an issue and I have been lax as a leader in addressing that issue. So I should say to the person, listen, part of the issue here is that I haven't been consistent enough following up with you and supporting you on this particular issue. So that's my fault. Because you know what's happening when you confront someone is their dialogue is immediately going on. And if you have a relationship, they're probably evaluating you, thinking about all the stuff that you've done that's created this issue as well. Okay. Then you indicate your wish to resolve the issue, assuming that this is not a firing conversation. And then you invite your partner to respond. Okay. Now, what's fascinating about this is I took, 5 minutes just explaining that. You can do this in 60 seconds at the beginning of a conversation, because you're looking to put all your cards on the table. You're not going to BS and beat around the bush and say, hey, how's it going? How are the kids?
Hence the disservice, right?
No. You just go right at it.
By beating around the bush, you're doing them a disservice.
Exactly. You go right at it. You get into the conversation, and then there's no guarantees, right? You don't know how they're going to respond. But at least you're clear on what the issue is. You give them an example, what's at stake, what your emotions are, how you've contributed to the problem. And now it's their turn to talk. Let me hear what you have to say about this.
Right. Absolutely. No, I know the book. I know. I'm glad you brought that up. That is fantastic. And so to give those who have difficulty having difficult conversations a script to use.
Yes.
Saying, okay, here you go. Practice this, rehearse it, do it the night before. Here's how you address it. And you can do anything for a minute, right?
Yes.
A minute or less. You can do anything for a minute. Get in there.
Yes. And I think the preparation is very helpful because it helps you to manage your emotions.
Yes.
And typically what happens in many of these conversations is that the emotions that we feel prior to them are based on our anticipation of the other person's response. Right. And a lot of times when we use an approach like this, we find the person responds in a way that perhaps was different than we would imagine. And it's not quite as bad as we thought it would be.
Right.
But there's no guarantees, though. They may fly off the handle at you.
Yeah. No guarantees anywhere in life.
That's right, man.
I can, anyway, I was going to do a Tommy Boy quote, but I probably shouldn't. So, as entrepreneurs are growing, they've put their heart and soul into their business. They're starting to hire people. What's the most important thing for them to focus on when they start hiring people? Because they've been doers for so long. Yeah. So what's that first role switch for the entrepreneur?
Yeah. So the first thing that you want to do when you're going through the hiring process is you want to create a scorecard. Okay. So you want to create a mission, a short statement of why the role exists. Why am I hiring this person? Then you want to identify 3 to 8 specific outcomes, objective outcomes that are observable that the person must accomplish to achieve an A performance. Then you want to identify the competencies, the role-based competencies that are linked to this particular position. And then you want to identify the cultural competencies that this person needs to display. So you need to create that scorecard so that you know going in what you're looking for. Then once you've created the scorecard, you have to source the talent. And this is a tremendous challenge for most people, is finding talented people. And one simple way to look at it is this: talented people know talented people. Yeah. So what you want to do is, once you've identified that position, is you want to go to the people that you know who are talented and ask them, I have this position. Who do you know who may be a fit for it?
So go ahead and get that reach out, ask the friends and the friends and family discount in a certain sense, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now you can use recruiters.
Talented friends and family, not all.
Yeah.
That doesn't go
I know
hand
a lot of my clients use recruiters, and that's all well and good. Some of the recruiters are really good, some of them aren't. And another thing you need to be able to do, and it's very interesting because I was chatting with one of my clients about this just yesterday, actually the day before. He wants to grow his business, but talent is at a premium. And it's going to require him perhaps to poach people from other companies. And he's reluctant to do that. And I was saying, listen, man, I mean, what you're doing is just part of business. It's at-will employment. It's not like you're doing something immoral or illegal. And so you need to get your head around that sometimes you need to go out into the marketplace and go find someone who works for somebody else and say, hey, listen, are you happy there? Is there, because I have an opportunity over here, maybe it'll be a fit for you. Maybe you'll have someone who's working for a corporate company and you're a little less corporate and they might want to make a shift because there's an opportunity for them to do different stuff. So you have to be willing to do that as well.
Maybe you're being kind by offering that opportunity.
There you go. There you go. Yep.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And so, so you work in construction industry, there's probably a little bit of grit within the construction industry. I'm assuming
there's a ton of it.
Where does maybe grit become a detriment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think grit can become a detriment when you keep taking on projects that are not in your wheelhouse. And you're saying, I'm gonna keep working this until I get it right. And perhaps that type of project is not a fit for you. Yeah. And you should look for projects that are more in your wheelhouse where you can make money.
Back to seeing things that are successful and obviously promoting what is successful. So, it's scary. So you're in the contracting industry or any industry, right? You've niched down for coaching and kind of business coaching to construction specific.
Yes. Yep.
Was it scary to limit the playing field down to just construction for you? And what kind of motivated you or gave you the strength to do that or courage to do that?
That's good. That's a good question. I think the answer is yes and no. And let me say why it's scary or why it creates some discomfort is because you are limiting yourself. And so, my company went from Eric Anderton, that was the name of my company, right, to Construction Genius. Yeah. And so everything I do is branded construction. Now, all the stuff that I do can be used by other companies in other industries, but for branding's sake and for the fact that I love construction, I niched to construction. But there was a little bit of discomfort there. It took me a while to get there. But as I began to think through, who do I resonate with? Who likes working with me? Where am I making my most money? It became evident that it was construction. And so when I chose the niche, there's a freedom there. Okay. One thing about construction, which is killer, is that there are plenty of construction companies out there. It's a huge niche. Yeah. And so I could get even more niche-y than I am already and still be perfectly fine. And so there's tons of opportunity there. It's also a place where when you pick a niche and you develop expertise, you become really well known and trusted. So people trust me that I know what I'm talking about. And that has come because I've spent years working with construction company leadership teams. And so the more experience you get, the more credibility you build, and the more opportunity you have to grow your business. As people say, there is riches in the niches, right? And so if you're able to identify that niche and then just discipline yourself to go after that, then it's really, really helpful to your business.
So I'm that entrepreneur, I'm barely making it.
Yes.
But is it merely profit that causes you to switch? Is it, again, there's sitting on that cliff kind of going, do I jump? I got the bungee cord tied to me. Do I trust the bungee cord? And I guess what I'm kind of asking is for those entrepreneurs out there and trying to determine what their niche is,
Right.
and or if they've determined it, when do you go, when you're looking at your bank account going, I need the 5 clients that aren't in my niche, to make it the next month.
Yeah. So if you get to that point, I think you've got to ask deeper questions than the niche. Okay. So the one advice I would give to every entrepreneur who's in a position that I think that you're describing there is, if you're struggling, and I'm serious about this, if your bank balance is struggling, my first question to you is, how much time are you spending selling? Get your butt out there and start selling. Okay. And you cannot control productivity, but you can control activity. And if you focus on quality activity, the productivity will come. And the fact that the logic behind a niche is that if I master that niche, it's actually going to drive sales for me as I establish my authority and expertise in that niche. Because what people do, and I think I mentioned this earlier, is they purchase from people that they know, trust, and like.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the reason I pursue a niche and establish myself in that is so that people get to know me. They get to trust me because of my understanding of their issues, and they get to like me. And because of know, trust, like, they then buy from me. And so if you're struggling, if you're at a point where you don't have enough business, dude, get your butt out there and sell. Get to networking events, okay? Get out there and understand what your clients are going through, their troubles and their problems. Develop marketing material around the problems that they actually face in the language that they actually use, and make sure that you're focused on solving their problems, and the money then will come to you. And then I'll give you another key insight, particularly for people who are solopreneurs, and this can go all the way up to massive businesses too. Many years ago, I was actually doing some cold calling, and I walked in on this guy, and I was probably in my late 20s, maybe early 30s. And I don't know why I asked him, but I just asked him, hey, do you have any advice for me? And it was just kind of a rando thing, you know what I mean? And he looked at me, he said, you know what? I'll give you my best piece of advice. Low overhead, stay humble. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. And that really, really stuck with me. It stuck with me. Yeah. And so the day I started my business, when I started my business in 2013, I started it on a Monday. On the previous Friday, I had gotten fired from a company that I worked with for a couple of years. Because after I sold leadership development, it actually went away in the Great Recession, and I had to go work for this other company, and I sucked at it. And I had to do it because I had a wife and kids, and I needed a little bit of money to support the wife and kids. And so I sucked at it, and I righteously got fired. Right. So I gave them my smartphone, my iPhone. I gave them back the laptop that they'd given me. And you know what I did? The next day I went down and I went to Metro PCS, the crap cellular company, and I got a crap phone. And I started my business with a crap phone because I was committed to keeping my overhead low. Right. I wasn't going to blow a bunch of money on stuff I didn't need. Low overhead. And then stay humble. And this is what I mean by stay humble. You're not as good as you think you are, and you're not as bad as you think you are. Okay, so sometimes when things are going well, you get a little puffed up, right? And then all of a sudden things start going badly and you get all depressed. Because pride can be seen in not only being overinflated, but then also getting real depressed. Oh, things are going so bad. That's just pride. Stay humble, right? Sometimes things are going to go well, sometimes they're going to suck. And then the last one is, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. Okay, So top line is one thing. Bottom line is what counts. Yeah. And your goal as an entrepreneur is to grow the gap between your top line and your bottom line. That's your profit. And it's not what you make at the top, it's what you keep. And so make sure that you're not wasting your money on stupid stuff that you don't need, so that when you do hit downs in your business, you have enough cash in the bank to take you through those downs, because the downs are coming.
Yeah. And you say what you keep in a bank, but also time, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned that a few times through here, getting out and selling, being smart with your time, the good activities, productivity, not busyness.
Yes.
I kind of want to go back to the sales side. When you niche down, you made that commitment, you were out there selling, you were selling to the construction industry.
Absolutely.
Can you put a rough percent of what you were like time you were spending selling then versus time you spend selling now?
Oh yeah, it was way more then than now.
Way more. Why is that?
because I have clients and I have an established niche, and I do more of my stuff now through marketing than I do through direct selling.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's keeping your name out there through different sources.
Yes. Yeah.
But people are selling you.
Yes.
Your clients are selling you.
Yes. So like when I started my business, I went out to all the companies that I worked with when I sold the leadership development program, and I was knocking on doors, cold calling, walking in on them. And that's in fact how I got my first client, because I walked in on an old client and the guy said, "Hey, Eric, we were just talking about you." He had a book in his hand. The book was called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, right? And he said, "Eric, can you do a workshop for us on this book?" And I'd never read the book, but I said, "Sure, I'll read the book and do a workshop. Why not? Yeah, just say yes."
It's an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, the answer is yes. And so that's how and I really built my business on doing stuff like that. But now I do a lot of marketing. I have my podcast. I have my book. I have my, I'm big on LinkedIn. The dullest social media site in the world, but it's very effective. And so I do much more marketing than I do direct selling.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I do that because I have an established clientele, and I'm not going around chasing.
Right.
But sometimes you got to chase.
Right. Well, and you did in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But by niching down, by spending that time chasing, selling, and building the brand, it now is more of a marketing. It's almost, again, marketing can a lot less time and can revolve around.
Yes. And there's tons of leverage as well. So let me give you an example here. Let me just give you a real quick example here. So yesterday, now this is key here, particularly if you have coaches and consultants who are listening, how to create content. So this is how I create content. I was talking to one of my clients yesterday who's a general superintendent. He has about 8 to 10 guys reporting to him. Okay. And he wants to get better as a leader. So I asked him a question: in what specific ways can you get better as a leader? He came up with 6 ideas. Okay. And I asked him to pick his top 2 ideas, and he picked those. Okay. So I got off the call with him, and that was content that he generated, right? I got off the call. I turned those 6 ideas into a video, a 2-minute video. I then turned that 2-minute video, got the transcript, and turned that into a Twitter thread, a LinkedIn post, a blog post. Okay. Right. So I've got the video on YouTube. I've got the Twitter thread, the LinkedIn thread, the blog post. It's language directly from his mouth that I then use as content, right? As marketing content, and it establishes my credibility and reinforces it, because people who hear it, who know construction, it resonates with them because it came out of the mouth of someone who's in construction.
Not just some boots on the ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you take one piece of content and you turn it into a whole bunch of different ones. Yeah.
No, I think it's a great recipe right there of the YouTube to transcript to then social media platforms, and boom, within an hour, probably you had it done.
Yep. And I get my videos transcribed. I use a service called Splashio. Quick plug for them. They're awesome. I don't get any credit for that, but they're awesome. Splashio. And they will transcribe your videos. Their customer service is killer. And they'll caption the videos too, so that you put the video up there. Because most people, as they're scrolling through their phones, like on LinkedIn, for instance, they'll read the captions as opposed to listen to it. You know what I mean? Right.
Mm-hmm. Depending where they're at, what's going on. Absolutely. Now, do they also transcribe into Spanish?
That's a good question. I don't think they do. They transcribe into the language, but you could probably take it and throw it through Google Translate and maybe get Spanish from that. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom.
Now, Eric, this has been great stuff. I always try to be aware of time. We've got about 10 minutes left.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked that a gritty entrepreneur should know?
Yeah, I think the key is to play long-term games with long-term people. So that's one of the reasons why I pick construction as well, is because it's a long-term business. Construction isn't going anywhere. The economy will go up and down, but it's a massive, massive market. Right. And I am committed to playing long-term games with long-term people. So when I started my business in 2013, I committed to a 20-year journey. That's what I said in my mind. I'm on a 20-year journey here. So I was 43 when I started. In my mind, I'm going to be working until I'm 70, because what I do, it's not like it's physically hard. As long as my brain works and my mouth works, I can help people. And so you've got to commit to long-term games with long-term people. And the problem with some of us is we have a hard time with commitment. We're always bouncing around, going after shiny objects, like you said earlier. And if you're going to be successful, I have a personal conviction that it comes from long-term games with long-term people.
Awesome. No, absolutely. And as you're starting a business, you're the solopreneur to then entrepreneur, to then having a viable business, it's maybe even getting out of a small business. It's those relationships, even those past employees can come back and be an asset. Everything needs to be done right, because you never know the value of a relationship later in life. And it's probably not until later in life that you realize and you go, crap, I probably should have treated so-and-so a little bit better.
Yeah.
But if
that's an interesting thing. Let me make a point about that. Number one, as much as possible, don't burn bridges with people. I understand there's sometimes people in your life that you never want to see again. Fair enough. And another thing is to be respectful of everyone that you come into contact with. So for instance, I know in my business, so I'm in my 50s, right? So I work with most of the people I work with are either my age or younger. And some of the guys and gals I work with are very young. They're in their late 20s, early 30s, but they're up and comers. And whenever I meet someone, I always want to be respectful of them, regardless of their background, regardless of their age, regardless of their experience. Because like I said, I'm playing long-term games with long-term people. And that guy or gal who's in their 20s or 30s right now, in 10 years' time, they're going to be the CEO of the company. And I want to make sure that I've established a strong relationship with them, regardless of where they are in their career.
Right. Or where they may end up. There's a point of just respect, right? Kind of back to, if you respect yourself, you're going to respect others, having the right mindset, kind of where we started. If you can tell yourself the right stories, get yourself in the right mindset, you can persevere through just about anything with the right mindset.
Absolutely. 100%.
So, well, awesome. Well, Eric, I've really enjoyed this. I've enjoyed hearing from you. I think this is just absolutely fantastic advice. Do you want to take a second and tell us about your blog, the book, just kind of get that title out there again?
Sure. You can contact me at constructiongenius.com. Here's the book, Construction Genius. It's interesting. The title is Effective, Hands-On, Practical, Simple, No BS Leadership Strategy, Sales, and Marketing Advice for Construction Companies. And I got that subtitle from one of my clients because they said, if you take Eric's leadership courses, it's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS. So I just took it right from my client's mouth. Did they actually say BS, or did they
give you the full version?
Yeah. That's just they gave me the no BS. Yeah, right. So you can buy the book, constructiongeniusbook.com, or you can find it on Amazon. And then I have a podcast myself, Construction Genius. We're a couple hundred episodes in, and you can check that out as well. So I'm kind of all over the place in the Construction Genius space.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. We appreciate your time, Eric.
My pleasure, Matt. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Grit Growth Podcast with host Carson Stefanelli and Matt Webster. We sincerely hope you were inspired by the interview and found at least one useful tool or tactic to implement in your own life. Now, level up by taking immediate action. Apply one lesson learned to your life as soon as possible to make sure it sticks. Post it and tag us to increase accountability. You can join the Grit Growth movement to restore American grit to its former glory by building an unprecedented force of conquerors, both in business and in life, at www.gritgrowth.org and wherever you're active on the socials. Please also drop a rating and review on your podcast app, as it goes a long way in helping the movement gain traction. Now, don't let this inspiration go to waste. Commit to conquer. Lead your life. Leave a legacy. Gather your grit and go get after it.